When will we reach a new Bitcoin and cryptocurrency market all-time high? And when will Bitcoin hit $100,000? These are two questions that get asked a lot, with a lot of people seemingly claiming that when the price of Bitcoin goes up a bit, then a $100,000 BTC is imminent. And inversely, when there's a small correction, there seems to be panic and we're going all the way back down. So in this video, I'd like to show you some metrics that could indicate when we will see a new all-time high for Bitcoin, while trying to maintain a balanced view and use evidence rather than rhetoric or hype to inform possible outcomes. And please remember that this video isn't financial advice and is simply education. So please do like this video and subscribe to the channel so I can continue to offer more content for you in future. And let's jump straight in and take a look at when we might see a new all-time high and $100,000 Bitcoin. The Bitcoin halving is due to take place in April 2024, which is the fourth Bitcoin halving to occur and is where the reward that miners receive per block will decrease from 6.25 BTC to 3.125 BTC, with, interestingly, before the first halving back in 2012, miners receiving 50 BTC per block. So let's take a look at what normally happens after the halving if we look back in history. And firstly, you can see here that it took almost exactly 1 year from the first Bitcoin halving in 2012, from the end of November 2012 to the end of November 2013, to go from about $11.50 Bitcoin at the time of the halving to reach an all-time high of over $1,000, followed by a long decline, which does stop still above the previous all-time high at the time of the first halving. So it's still an increase. And next, when we take a look at the second Bitcoin halving in 2016, it actually took longer to hit an all-time high following the halving, with it taking about 17 months instead of the previous 12 months after the first halving that we've just seen. But again, we can see the price went from just over $630 to over $19,000, followed again by the inevitable dip after the all-time high, as you can see here. And finally, the third Bitcoin halving back in 2020 took about 18 months after the halving to reach its all-time high. So a similar time frame to the second halving, going from over $9,000 to well over $65,000, although it did touch about $60,000 before this, as you can see on the graph here, and then leading back down to the lows that we saw in 2022. So to summarize, there was just under a 100x increase after the first halving in 2012, when it hit its next all-time high, then about a 53x increase following the Bitcoin halving of 2016, to just over a 7x increase in the third halving of 2020. So if we followed that pattern and said there would be, let's say, 19 months until the next Bitcoin all-time high following the April 2024 halving, then we wouldn't see that all-time high happening until about November of 2025. And based on the increases following the Bitcoin halvings, then we might see a 2x or 3x this time, which would probably put us at or above that $100,000 mark. And while we're looking at these graphs, I'd like you to think of investor sentiment here. So euphoria, hype, FUD, and despair, because how were investors feeling during the bull markets and large increases, and how might people feel during the next one? Because I think it's important to think about this, as this is where the hype was, with people buying in, thinking it would just continue to go up and up and up, while others would be debating where the top was, when we'd reach it, how high we'd go, and worry about selling too early. So they may have ended up holding on for too long if they were planning on taking profits and not holding. But if you remember from my previous videos, I advocate taking the emotion out of investing wherever possible and making balanced decisions based on the evidence that's out there. And also, what happened when Bitcoin's price went down each time, which has happened relatively quickly? Well, some people then panicked and sold at a loss, with others getting liquidated who were over leveraged, neither of which are obviously good news. And ultimately, when it comes to Bitcoin, holding for the long term with some people just not selling at all, is the general advice most people look at, including me. And remember, not financial advice, and hopefully this will help some people during the next bull run. Let's now reverse what we looked at first in this video and look at how long it's taken from the Bitcoin all-time high until the next halving, because it took about 31 months from the all-time high in 2014 to reach the 2016 halving. And then it took about 29 months to go from the 2018 all-time high to the 2020 halving, so a similar amount of time. And if we assume that it will take a similar amount of time to go from the next all-time high to the 2028 halving, then the next all-time high for Bitcoin should be again towards the end of 2025, in about December, although this is an estimate given that we don't know when the 2028 halving will take place exactly. So we've seen so far November and December 2025 as possible dates for the next all-time high, if we're looking back at what has happened previously in history. But let's now zoom out and look at bear markets we've had rather than just at halvings, because you can see here that there was a Bitcoin all-time high in December 2017, and it took almost exactly 12 months to reach the bottom of the cycle in December 2018, and this was about an 83% correction. And if we look at the next and most recent Bitcoin all-time high back in early November 2021, again it took almost exactly 12 months to reach the cycle bottom in November 2022, with Bitcoin here going down about 75%, which is less of a correction than the previous bear market. So if we're working on the assumption that a large all-time high takes place for Bitcoin every 4 years, as there has been in 2013, 2017, and then again in 2021, and that there is therefore a 4-year cycle for Bitcoin, then the next all-time high should be in 2025, probably in again about November, like the previous 2 all-time highs. So we've seen different metrics that point to the next all-time high taking place in late 2025, if you look back in history. But the question is, could Bitcoin see an all-time high sooner than this? Well, sure, because we'll look at a few more reasons that could affect the price next. And I would again just like to point out this isn't financial advice, and I'm sure we'd of course be pleased to see an all-time high earlier than this. But let's see what happens, because when you zoom out, you can see the large 2023 gains Bitcoin has had. So the question is, could this be repeating the initial spike in 2021 prior to the all-time high? Or will we see another correction or sideways movement until 2025, for example? Or do you believe that Bitcoin will simply keep increasing from here onwards? And when do you think that will take place, and when will it stop? Because ultimately, no one knows for sure, which is why education is so important. And things are not the same now as they have been previously, because we haven't had Bitcoin Spot ETFs in previous cycles and halvings, increasing buying pressure and demand on top of the reducing supply of Bitcoin following the halving. So that could be a catalyst for further growth. As we know in the wider world, the macroeconomic backdrop and in crypto, things can change very quickly, because on the one hand, we have political instability, conflicts, issues with supply chains and access to shipping. There are elections in more than 50 countries with more than 4 billion people who are eligible to vote in 2024. US debt is at an all-time high at the moment, and I'll actually be doing a video soon looking at the health of the wider economy, providing evidence and more detail, such as looking at the yield curve, interest payments and rates, etc. So do keep an eye out for that one. And on the other hand, we have all-time highs on the S&P 500, which have recently taken place. And Bitcoin, as we saw earlier, is up a lot recently. And you can see the growth since it was down in the $16,000 range back in 2022, with it surpassing $50,000 in February 2024. And all of this is why I normally take a step back, breathe, zoom out, try and take the emotions out of investing and invest for a longer time horizon. Because if you have people who are saying that they know when the next all-time high will be and can predict the future of this, which they can't, I personally would be wary of them and wouldn't be betting financially on it. But As always, I'd love to know what you think in the comments below. Do you see a new Bitcoin all-time high in 2024 or 2025? And what do you think will happen in the meantime? And if you're interested in more of a tailored approach to your general crypto education, and you think you'd benefit from having someone look over your shoulder and guide you on your journey, I do offer one-to-one coaching to those who have the desire and the means to educate themselves further. And there are links in the description where you can message me and book in a free video call to see if we'd be a good fit. And if you found this content interesting, please do like the video and subscribe to the channel, as it really does help. And have a great day.